Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, but if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's fine. We do record the show as we're doing today, and it will be posted to our show archives for you to watch later at your convenience. And I will show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of our show recordings. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open to anyone to watch. So please do spread the word, share with anyone who you think might be interested in any of the topics we have on NCompass Live. For those of you not from Nebraska, the Nebraska Library Commission is the state agency for libraries. So we are similar to whatever is your whatever state library. So we provide training and consulting and grants and databases and all sorts of resources to all types of libraries in the state. So you will find shows on NCompass Live for all types of libraries. Public, academic, K-12, corrections, museums, historical societies, et cetera, et cetera. Really our only criteria is that it's something to do with libraries. We have Nebraska Library Commission staff that sometimes come on the show and do presentations for us about services and resources and programs that we do through the Library Commission, but we also bring in guest speakers, and that is what we have today. Joining us this morning is Jessica Chamberlain. Good morning, Jessica.
Morning.
Hey, and she is from here in Nebraska. She is from our Norfolk Public Library, and she's going to talk about your library's value and working with your board to get them to help spread the word about how great your libraries are. Jessica, this is a session that you did previously at
a joint. I think it was the Southeast Library Systems extravaganza.
Their training extravaganza. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and a joint meeting with the PLTS, so the Public Library Trustee section of NLA.
The Nebraska Library Association, right? That right. There was that special joint meeting. Yeah. And so that was an in-person meeting, and we decided to see, I know this is something very important to libraries, so I invited Jessica to come on and do the same session here on NCompass Live. So I will hand it over to you, Jessica, to tell us all about how we can do all this at our libraries.
Okay. Well, as Krista said, I'm from Norfolk, Nebraska. I'm the library director here. If you're not familiar with Norfolk, it's a town of about 25,000 people. So that could be super tiny or super big, depending on your context and where you're coming from. But that's our community. And yeah, I was happy to present this. At the time, I was co-chair of the PLTS section. I'm now the past co-chair of PLTS for NLA. So but yeah, I think this is something, and I want to start with a caveat. Just because I'm presenting on this does not mean I am like super perfect at doing all of these things. I think there's a lot of good ideas that we should prioritize and try to get done. But I also want to, as Krista mentioned, this was an in-person session. And so it was really interactive. We talked with the audience a lot, and I think that added a lot of value. So even though we're in an online format, we're going to try to do quite a few interactive things today. So I'll switch to.
Sure. Anybody, if you do have any, and I did mention this earlier, but I know people came in after those intro slides and after I was talking about it. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, comments, thoughts, use the questions section of your GoToWebinar interface, type in there, and listen up for whenever Jessica wants to hear something from you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is what we're going to go over quickly. We're going to talk about board engagement first, then we're going to talk about types of value, because when we talk about communicating the value of the library, what do we mean by value? And then we're going to talk about different types of information, and then we're going to put all of those pieces of the puzzle together. So that's our plan for this morning session. So speaking of board engagement, in Norfolk, we're considered a city of the first class in Nebraska. So our city has the option to have a governing board or have an advisory board. Well, since way back in the 80s, we've had an advisory board here in Norfolk. So, but I know it's much more common in Nebraska to have a governing board. So I'd be curious. I see we have about 25 attendees. If your board is a governing board, could you raise your hand? Krista, can you get a count of people if they raise their hand if they're a governing board?
Yeah, let me just pop this out here. Yeah. So there is a little hand raising option there on your interface as well. Seeing hands pop up, gonna wait and see if we get, yeah. So if you are governing better than advisory. Like, wait, make sure I got all, okay. Looks like we've got 9.
Okay. So that means then we have about 9. So I'm going to just do the math. So we have maybe 14, 13 or 14 that are advisory. So I think these tips and tools are equally applicable. I just think that's helpful to kind of know where we're starting from. So, okay. So to me, board engagement starts, number 1, with board recruitment. Who gets to have a seat on your board? This is essential. You know, sometimes you have long-standing board members and maybe vacancies don't come up all that often. Maybe you have term limits and you have somebody that's rotating out every year. You know, I know there's going to be different situations in different communities, but when you get an opportunity to fill a spot on your board, this is a huge part for how you're going to build board engagement, is starting right from the beginning about board recruitment. So be thinking about this, and this is something to be thinking about all year long, because you might have a board member who moves unexpectedly or resigns unexpectedly. So when you have that chance, be thinking about some things. And some things I think about are, who are your super users? Who's in the library at least once a week? Who's checking out materials? Who's coming to programs? Who's probably already talking about your library to their friends, to their family members? You know, so who's that really active user who's also going to come from a place of understanding the purpose of the library? They're going to understand a lot of the functionality of how the library works, just because they're such a good patron and they're using it constantly. Now, just because they're a good patron doesn't mean they might not have lots of overdue fines or something like that, you know, or they might not have a lot of late materials, but they're in the library and they understand how it works. Another way to look at it is, who are the influencers or strategic partners in your community? If you have in your strategic plan that you want to be a better partner with the schools, then maybe you want to think about someone who would represent the schools to be on your board. So you're thinking about it in that strategic way of, well, maybe we want to make sure we have a business person, someone from the Chamber of Commerce or a small business owner. You know, what are your overall strategic plan goals for your library, and who could represent that organization or that ideal on your board? And that's also thinking about being representative of your community and making sure that your board is reflective of who lives and works in your community. And that's part of that strategic thinking too, of, you know, who do we want to have here? There's also, I think every community has those handful of people who just everybody seems to know them. You know, maybe they're already on a couple of different boards and, you know, but they just seem to be everywhere and they're very likable and people like them, they listen to them. Well, that would be a pretty powerful ally to have on your library team too. So thinking about it as in you're recruiting allies for the library when you're thinking about recruitment. You also want to think about who's going to stand up for the library in times of trouble. Who is going to be someone who has that strong enough will and strong enough viewpoint that, you know, if there are book challenges in your community, or if there are budget cuts, or there's some other kind of social or financial crisis happening, who would be willing to stand up in front of city council? Who would be willing to talk to their friends? Who would be willing to say, I know you may not understand the backstory, but here's what I can tell you because I'm a library board member. So you definitely want someone who has that kind of strength of character that you know will be vocal for you if you need them to be. You also want to be clear about your expectations of board members when you talk to them. I have a quick little info sheet on like, here's what's expected. There's this many meetings a year. There's this much time outside of board meetings. So it's very clear from the get-go what kind of time commitment I'm asking of them. And also it's listed on there that advocacy for the library is part of what their job is. So I realize every community is going to have a different flavor. And in your community, you may have a lot of influence and choice over who's on the board, or you may not. That's really gonna vary. But when you do have a chance to exercise your own influence, here are the things that we're aiming for. Or if maybe your city administrator or your mayor or city councilman ask you, well, who do you want? What kind of person do you want on the board? Your goal is to have board members who actively use the library. They're going to spread the word about the good things you're doing. They're comfortable making decisions on policy in good times and bad, and that they represent your community. So I think that's a really powerful place to start from. So our next piece is going to be talking about communication to the board. And this is something I always think I could be better at. I think this is one of those continuous improvement sort of opportunities, but you need to be communicating to your board in a different way than you communicate to the regular public and in a different way than you communicate to your staff. But from the very beginning, you want to treat each board member as if they're an ally. And maybe they're not yet. I know sometimes there are board members who get on a board and they cause disruption. They're not supportive. They're not helping move your mission forward. But if we start from that place that we are going to create an ally out of this person, and treating everyone like they're there, they're on your side, and they want to help you succeed. So make sure that you have a good onboarding procedure to get each new member acclimated. They should get some kind of information packet, whether it's a digital or physical packet. It should have your library board bylaws. It should have your library policies. It should have a sample of your budget. If there's any like hot topic items that are happening in your community around the library, you're in the middle of renewing your strategic plan, or you're in the middle of a challenges situation. If there's something big that they need to know from day one, then tell them in that onboarding thing. Make sure they walk around and meet your staff. They see your behind the scenes areas, give them that behind the scenes tour. And that to me is part of that treating them like an ally, is starting to treat them like an insider. Like you're starting to let them be an internal person, an internal audience. They're in on things that you don't tell the general public. They're in on the backstory of what's happening in the library. And again, early and often let them know that advocacy in the community is part of their role. And that, that's part of what you want them to do. Is if they go to the coffee club at the gas station, that they're talking about the library. If they're part of a service club, if they're part of a religious organization, that they're talking about the library when applicable and when helpful, that they're spreading the good word about what you're doing. And each meeting is a marketing opportunity. Pardon me while I get a tissue. But each time that you meet for a board meeting, and this is kind of on that next point too, like put event updates and advocacy tips right on the meeting agenda. Give them a little blurb, something they can share. Give them a little update on if there's a bill at your legislature, that affects the library. Use those meetings that you have to do your board work, right? To get the library bills paid and to do all the things that need to get done. But make sure advocacy is a regular part of your meeting too. And it doesn't have to be huge, but a little tip, a little factoid, a little nugget of things they can share. Make sure they're getting copies of event flyers, newsletters, and whether that's print or via email, whatever their preference is. But make sure they're one of your main audiences and that they really feel in the know. So your goal with all of this is that the board understands their role and they feel informed. So if someone asks them something, they feel like they know. They feel like they can speak on behalf of the library. And I think that was something that took me a while to learn that I think I made assumptions that board members were more in the know than they were, because they were board members, and I knew that they cared, and I knew that they were involved and they were in the library checking out books and stuff. But I was often caught off guard that they didn't know the kinds of services that we offered. If it wasn't something they used personally, they maybe didn't know about it. So really being intentional about that communication about the library, so that they do feel informed. If someone says, does your library have a meeting room that I can use? They know how to answer that question. They need, that they know how to say yes, and here's the rules, or here's where you find the rules, at least. So that's a big piece of it. And then the next part is the communication about the board. So this is what you're telling other people about your board members. And this includes your staff and the public. So your staff members need to know your board members, ideally, at least, recognize them, know their names, invite the board members to participate in your events, whether that's public events, programs that you're doing, but even staff events. If you're doing a potluck, is it okay to bring your board members in? Depending on your situation, maybe yes, maybe no. But at least think about it. Are there staff things that you're doing that are internal things that you could invite your board members to, so they get to know you guys a little bit better? You can feature them in your newsletter, do like a little board member spotlight. This is a great recruitment tool also, because life is busy. There's so many opportunities for people to serve in the community, so many asks of their time a lot of times. If we don't promote that the library board is something we need public servants to volunteer for, we need to make sure that the public knows that that's something that we rely on volunteer board members. So featuring them in your newsletter is a great way of saying thank you to them, but also a great publicity piece for when you need someone new, that people at least know this is a thing in your community. Same thing with like thanking them on social media. You could do a meet and greet with the staff. This is more of depends on the flavor of your board members and your staff members, right? What do they all feel comfortable with? Some board members may not want to be featured on social media, but would be okay with, coming in and doing coffee and donuts with the staff or something. But the goal here is that your board members who are already serving, that they feel involved and they feel valued. They know that you appreciate them and the time that they give you, and they feel involved in what you're doing. You're building investment in them. So, I have to share, our current board president, his name is Kurt, and he is such a strong advocate for the library. My favorite saying that he says, advocacy is a lifestyle. And I love that. And he lives it too. And he'll tell stories about, people who've said, way back when we were building a new building, and, someone said, well, we don't need to invest in the library. Who uses the library anymore? And his eyes lit up and he was like, they didn't know that I was on the library board. And then he got a chance to tell his story. So like, that's your goal, is someone who is like so excited and waiting to share about what the library has to offer. Okay. Let me go back before we move on to the value. Any ideas or comments from our audience of, things that have worked well for them, things that I haven't mentioned that you do that you would like to share with us? We'll pause for just a moment for you to either raise your hand or type in the chat.
Yeah, type in the chat anything else you all have done with your boards. I think, board training is something I think that I was thinking about this when you're talking about your first slide, your previous slide. I mean, a lot of libraries don't think about that. They just figure, oh, you come on, you know what being on a board and this is all about. And here's a binder of everything we do. And it needs to be, I think, a lot more back and forth, and a lot more, you're working on this together. It's a partnership. Make them feel empowered and like, they are part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that
done for working with their boards. You can type in that question section there and let us know anything you've had success with.
Yeah.
Or anything you've struggled with. Let us know. We can answer those questions.
Give you just another minute to chat in if you want to. And one thing that we did, now we have a library podcast, and I know that's not super common, but we invited all of our board members to be on the podcast, and then we asked them, we did like an unboxing of them. So we asked them things like, what was your favorite book when you were a kid? And, just like some personal but not too personal questions, just to help get to know them a little bit. And again, just kind of promote that out to the community that, hey, we have board members.
Yeah, I like that. Someone says they have never been able to get any board members to do it, but I thought it would be a good idea to have them come and volunteer at the branch. Like actually have them, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting so excited because we're actually doing that this year. I asked my board members if they would job shadow us at the service desk for 1 hour during National Library Week.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so we thought that would really give them kind of a behind the scenes look at the variety of questions that we get, the variety of people that come in looking for so many different things. So yes, I love that. So if it hasn't worked yet, keep trying. Maybe frame it a little bit differently, or I don't know, just keep asking and see if they say yes, because I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, someone says they like that idea of the job shadowing. So maybe not so intimidating as far as we want you to work the desk, but just come and see how we do things here and be behind the desk with us. And, we might ask you to try and do a couple of easy things, but it's okay. You won't.
Yeah. So but we're right here. And and it is more just about that, that sort of understanding piece. Yeah.
And someone else commented, and I think they're at a library also in the same system that you're in. I'm not sure if you ever use these. Here in Nebraska, we have what we call our regional library systems, which are not systems like some states have where you're a member of it and you all do things together. They are independent nonprofits that are related to us, the Library Commission, kind of our boots on the ground people, I like to call them. And they do training, consulting, and come to libraries. And the TAMI, the Three Rivers Library System that Norfolk is in, does breakout boxes.
Yeah.
Which kind of like, the breakout boxes that you might have done for kids or teens, like an escape room and a box thing, but she's put them together specifically for board training. So it makes it more of a fun game type thing for the boards. And lots of libraries have asked her to come and do it repeatedly when they have new members. And she has them that she can lend out and everything. So give it a little different twist. Yeah. Your training.
Yes, that was a really fun, and that was like a team building almost sort of activity for the board also, which I thought was extra bonus. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think that whole team building part of the board development is also important and helps them feel like a team together as the board. And things like those breakout boxes are great for that. All right. Well, we will move on. So we're going to talk a little bit about communication about value, because in our perfect world that we have now created, we have this wonderful, well-educated, informed board. So we're gonna put them over here. Here's our board. They're going to sit and wait for us for a minute, and we're going to talk about the communication about value. So just a few minutes to kind of review the types of value that libraries bring to their communities. Those of us who have been in libraries a long time, who are so invested in libraries, I think we sometimes just know that libraries are valuable, and we don't parse out the details of it a whole lot. And so when someone says like, well, who needs the library anymore? We're like, oh my gosh, how could you even say that? Because we know how important they are. But so just to kind of walk through some of the different kinds of value, because we're going to break this down a little bit farther as we go. But, you have financial and economic value, right? We boost local economies. We help people find jobs. We're good for economic development. There are studies that say that real estate is higher when you're closer to a library than when you're farther away. We have return on investment studies about the value of dollars invested in libraries and the value they create for their communities. So we've got that whole wheelhouse of value. We have educational and intellectual value, right? Libraries help with lifelong learning for very young people, for older people. They host loads of information for research, for anyone seeking knowledge, for students. Of course, free access to information, that informed citizenship that we want to have in a democracy. So we have that kind of intellectual and educational kind of value. More and more, we talk about the social and community value of libraries, being that third place in the community, being one of the last free places you can go where you can access services and you're not expected to buy a cup of coffee to use the Wi-Fi or to purchase something in order to be there and enjoy the space. In an era where we're talking about loneliness epidemics, libraries are places for social interaction, for community connection, support for vulnerable populations. So there's a huge social and community value that libraries have. Cultural and historic, many of our libraries have local history sections, Nebraska history sections. You know, we're preserving the stories of our community and of our state. Culturally, we host artists and art exhibits and humanities programs and artist programs, and you know, there's all that kind of creative cultural part. So that whole arts and humanities realm of what libraries do and support are in there as well. And we think about the environmental impact of libraries too. When we're resource sharing, we're lowering our carbon footprint overall. We're doing things, we can have green practices, we can have sustainability practices, making sure our buildings are environmentally friendly, you know, but there's all these different kinds of value. So any kinds of value that I missed, going to do a quick check-in with our audience. Is there something top of your mind that we did not cover?
Yeah, what do you think is a value in your communities?
These are some pretty broad headings, so maybe it's okay if there's nothing else. I just wanted to kind of touch base and make sure I didn't forget some big glaring, like, what about this?
There's a good one. Library as a third space.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you could count that in that social and community aspect too. But yeah, having the library as a third place is a very value. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
So we have our types of value. So we're going to set those aside. We have our well-informed board waiting for us. We have our types of value now waiting for us. So next we have our types of information. So I usually put these in kind of two different big buckets. We have our data, which appeals to our logic, appeals to our head. We have things like circulation statistics, attendance numbers, door counts, anything that can be quantifiable. These demonstrate productivity success. They demonstrate logical justification for the library, and it appeals to our intellect, to our brain. And then we have story kinds of information, and this would be the qualitative sort of information. These are anecdotes on how a program or service impacted someone. They're those heart-wrenching stories, right? Of you know, I have a story I love to tell about someone who I helped find, you know, help get on the computer and fill out an application for a job, and he was just having the hardest time, and we were able to get through those struggles. And he came back a couple of days later and told me, took the time to tell me that he got the job. And, you know, there's those kind of stories that are like, wow. You know, but this is any kind of qualitative data you can get from a survey, right? Like, did you learn something new at this program? Would you recommend this to a friend? These are the things that connect emotionally with the mission of the library. They are stories that connect the why. This is why we do this. Here's the impact, and I can demonstrate that. And these are the things that appeal to the heart. I think we all know people that prefer one or the other. They're always moved either by data or by heart-wrenching stories, but many of us live in the middle. We would love to have a heart-wrenching story that says, my heart tells me this is right, but I would like to also be backed up by the data. the data also shows me that this is a good thing to do, or a responsible thing to do, a smart thing to do. So anytime you can blend the two, then you really have a lot of impact, because you're hitting anyone, regardless of whichever kind of information is more important to them, you're hitting both of them. So the other thing I'd like to add about data is that make sure your data doesn't live in a vacuum. Data always needs context. So if I say we had 130,000 visits to our library that last year, is that a lot? Is that a little? You don't know. I don't, and I don't know if I'm not an insider. I have no idea. Is that good? Is that bad? So giving it a comparison to last year, showing growth, showing that context. This is how these numbers live in the world. Or comparing it to something that people can visualize. For example, 130,000 people is a line of people 25 miles long. That sounds like a lot. Or you could fill Memorial Stadium 1.5 times with the number of people that visited our library last year. So giving people something visual to see in their minds, I think, is really important. So data is good, but just don't let your data live in a vacuum. Just a number without any context, it doesn't tell us anything. So now we're going to put all of these three pieces together. So we're going to think about the type of value that we want to communicate about, what type of information we're going to use, and then what would be reasonable to ask your board to do about that information. So that's my little math problem. It's the most math I'll ask you to do. So we think about, like, using that financial goal or financial value as a say that was our goal. And I always think you need to start with a goal. Don't start some kind of plan without a roadmap. Where are you trying to get? What are you trying to do? What's the point? What are you trying to accomplish? So if your sample goal was that you want your community to understand that their library is worthy of their tax dollars. So this would be maybe in a situation where you're facing budget cuts, or you're uncertain, or you're hearing a lot of grumblings in the community about high taxes, or what you're hearing is that people are not super happy about the amount of money that's going to the library. So you can proactively start to combat that message by saying, well, we want to make sure our community understands that the library is worthy of their tax dollars. So this is where we're going to get super interactive. If this was my goal, what kind of data could I use? What data would I use to share this information? When we think about that logical information that's going to appeal to the brain.
Yeah, type into the question section there what you all would use, or if you have done this kind of thing, the whole ROI, return on investment, is what we're talking about here. Yeah. What % of the budget it is.
Oh, that's great.
The whole city budget or whole municipality budget. Yeah.
That's
We're only
excellent.
this much. Look what you get from that. And then
Yeah.
the ROI data. Yep.
Yep. Return on investment studies are something that we are familiar with, but most people in our community are not familiar with what an effective, efficient organization a library is for its community. So it's an excellent thing to share.
And someone shared a link, and I've got it here to a calculator for what's your library worth. This is from the ilovelibraries.org.
Yes.
ilovelibraries.org /calculator, all spelled out. And how much money are you saving by using your local library? Use this handy library value calculator to find out. And you can choose things like how many books have I borrowed, young adult, children's, interlibrary loans, magazines read, meetings room use, computer use, et cetera, and it'll tell you how much each of those things are worth and how much you personally have saved.
Yes, those are wonderful.
Me personally, it has been worth this much and cost me whatever it is in my taxes.
Yes. Those are all great examples.
The savings for businesses who use our resources, local businesses, entrepreneurship, databases, makerspaces, if people are coming and
Yeah.
using the resources for that.
Yeah, I like that business angle because sometimes our business people are, they're always watching that bottom line dollar. And so sometimes they're questioning, how are you spending this money that I'm giving you in my tax dollars? So, so making sure they understand what you're giving back, especially to the business community, I think is great.
And they can be good advocates for you as well. They will talk about it to their friends and their other business colleagues. Yeah. And someone said this, what is your library worth calculator? You're sharing it out to, your actual users to use it, but use it for your entire library. Like use it to say, here is how many books were borrowed from the library, how many children's books were borrowed. So put in here your actual library statistics, and then you will have a total of the whole library has saved people this much for this much. You put this much into our budget, or this is how much you are paying in taxes, but look at how much it was actually worth. Wait, hang on here. Where is it? All right. I don't see any other new comments coming in. But Jessica, we've lost your audio for some reason. You had that pop up that said something about an update, and now I don't hear anything. No audio, no. Make sure it's just. Try going into the audio section of your GoToWebinar interface and reselect what you use for audio.
Oh, no, that's not. Oh, what about that?
You're back.
Okay.
Yep. All
right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, so the story pieces might be a little bit harder for this one. And I think story is often, it's harder for us to collect, right? Like we have numbers, we have statistics we put together, but stories we have to kind of actively collect. So this could be something, that you are talking to patrons, or you're asking your staff to like write down when they have these interactions, because we so easily forget, I think, how often we're helping people with this kind of stuff that it's just day-to-day routine. We don't even think about it. But maybe spending a day or a week or a certain amount of time and asking your staff to write down when, like, stories of when they've helped people, even if for like a financial one, an example would be, I was helping someone last week, and this is a story from last year, to be honest, but last year I was helping someone, but she was really struggling. She had to print out all these tax forms, and it was going to be very costly for her. It was money she didn't have. She was very worried about paying for all these copies and how she was going to get her taxes filed. And the library hosts AARP to do tax filing. So while it's not a direct service that we offer, we were able to connect her with AARP. She got an appointment. She got her taxes taken care of. They helped her with all of the forms that she needed. And that was a real financial concern for her that we were able to alleviate and connect her to needed resources. I think this could be told also through, we have people that come in that are looking for overnight shelter, emergency shelter. They're looking for places where they can get assistance with, utilities or things like that. And we are often a referral, informal referral agency where we're saying, hey, here's an organization you can call, here's the address of this place, here's some resources we can connect you with. So those can also be very touching, heartwarming stories that have direct financial impact for our community.
Someone typed in here, we have a brag board, actually two different ones, one both for staff, a Google Doc so staff can just say great things about each other, and a dry erase board out in the library for patrons.
I'm loving this idea. I'm writing it down, as you can see. What, like on your staff brag board, what goes on there? Like success stories? Like here's something that was a win?
Whatever nice things patrons say. So if someone helps someone,
Oh,
they get like what you were just saying, the follow up of the goods of the results of what you help them with.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
That's
I
a good
love
idea.
that
Bring those
idea.
up, 'cause I'm sure you have those interactions regularly. We all do at the libraries, but do you remember them, 3 months later when you're talking to, your city council about budget time? Do you remember that thing that happened? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah. And I think that's where, so far, like all of this work is work on our end, right? So far, the board has not done any of this work. This is library staff work. And collecting those stories, I think, should be a bigger part. I know for me it is, and maybe other people are much better at that than I am, but I know for me that's often the thing where I forget, because it just, like I said, it becomes so routine. We're so used to helping people. We forget that other people don't know how much we help people.
Here's some examples they have. These are some really cool, cute things that I want to read. Yeah. Someone said regarding printing, they're free. I'm moving back to Clinton, the city. What a blessing it is to have this library here, translated from Spanish. So they commented, they supposed that it was that.
Nice.
And someone said, to be honest, the library is a good place to hang out when it's like that snowy outside. And it's got you making us laugh.
Oh,
It's like quotes that a lot of people have actually said. You go in and immediately type it into the Google Doc so people remember these kudos,
yeah.
things. You're going to have a bad day at some point, and I'm sure you'd always go and look at these and say, "Oh wow, we did do good." But then also you can share this with people and your stakeholders and people who,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I love that. So here's a couple of examples I had just in case they weren't brought up, but this is our state library does a return on investment study for all of our public libraries. But they are kind of a partial, like they're an initial return on investment. You could also add in their meeting rooms, programs, other kind of services that you offer. So they give you a great start, and you can definitely use it as is, or you can use that and then build on it.
And this is
There's
just
that library.
from the public library survey that everyone does every year that we submit. We at the state library here, us, the Library Commission in other states, you submit a public library survey all across the country that then goes to IMLS, Institute Museum Library Services. And all this data is just pulled from there and put into this nice, pretty looking thing. So you all have been already keeping this data and submitting it somewhere. If our data coordinator here, Sam Shop, does this for our libraries, but you could also do it for yourself off of your data that you've already gathered.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then there's just a screenshot of a library use value calculator that someone already brought up. So that's just what that looks like. Another option, several ILS systems will allow you to put the value on the receipt of what you've checked out, the value of that. That's another great way to get that information in front of your patrons on a regular basis. And then we also did a social media campaign on financial value. We did a whole thing on save money using the library, and then it would be different snippets, like check out a pass to the museum, or use our Cricut machine instead of buying your own, or some of the different things that we offer. And we use that same save money using the library tag, and then just ran that for a number of weeks to try to get that message out there. So that's another way to do it. So here's all the work you've done on your end. So now what can the board do? What out of all of this, what could you go to your board who feels valued and informed, who feels involved, and they want to help, but they do sometimes need to be kind of, I don't want to use spoon-fed in a bad way, but they do need a reasonable task, and we do have to actually ask them to do this task. We have to say something. So what is, using some of this information, what could you ask your board to do? We're going to give it a pause to give you a chance to to chat in. I have a few ideas, but I think you have some good ideas out there too that I'm not going to know about.
Yeah, how can your board use this?
Yeah, keeping in mind that your board members are volunteers. They're probably busy folks also. But what's a reasonable thing that you would feel comfortable asking them? Hey, Judy, could you? Here's the thing. Could you do this with it?
Mhm. Let's see here. Sharing our social media posts. Yeah, if anyone's on social media.
I love that, because that's often an easy ask to say, hey, would you mind sharing our social media when you see it? Yeah, that's a great one. I love that.
Promoting the events calendar, the calendar that we have of the different things that we do at the library, sharing that out there. That's definitely, and I think some people think advocacy is like seriously going to your legislators and being that, but it's simple things like that. Just saying, here's the cool things the library does.
Yeah.
That's advocating for the library. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's that everyday message that the library is important and the library is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharing that return on investment flyer with the numbers specifically for the library, getting copies of that they can take to their businesses, their whatever they do that's not library related. Like you said earlier, this is a part-time volunteer thing they do. They all have other jobs and lives and things too. So provide them with piles of, like we're all very much, digital now, of course, on our phones and social media, like you said, but paper too. Some people like that piece of, something they can take and hold on to and read and show it to somebody else.
Yeah. Even just like throw it on the break room table. Maybe a couple of people will see it while they're drinking their coffee or grabbing a yogurt out of the fridge or, but yeah, just having it around. And at the very least, it's having the library is a thought in their head that day, even if they didn't really read it. They're like, oh, there's a thing from the library. Yeah. Another thing to think about would be like an elevator pitch version. If you could distill your ROI study or your value use calculator or something like that into like a 2-sentence elevator pitch for them. And that could be something that goes on your next meeting agenda or in an email to them, or something that says like, here's a really short answer if someone asks you about this, or if you have the opportunity to share it, but like you're kind of pre-giving them that elevator pitch. Or especially financial, I think about who gives information to your city council or your funding entity, whatever that is. Is it appropriate or a good idea to have maybe one of your board members, your board president, or one of the members give your financial report or give your annual report for the library? Would that be helpful? Is that a way for them to step up and show their advocacy for the library? So that's another thing to think about. Public speaking is a lot of people don't want to do it, but there are sometimes people who would be willing to stand up and do that for you. So think about that. Are there arenas where usually it's you as the director or you as the supervisor, or is it usually you on the front step of whatever that is? Could a board member maybe be there instead? Okay. So our next is to think about, so we're just going to work through a couple of these, that maybe just one more example, because then you see the formula, right? Like we're going to start with a goal. We're going to think about what data we're going to gather. So we'll kind of work through another example of what that looks like. So say we're wanting to talk about the educational and intellectual value of our library. Maybe we're in an environment where people are saying like, oh, no one reads books anymore, or who uses all that stuff, or you don't need a bigger building or to renovate your building because people just read ebooks now, and you want to demonstrate that the community understands the library provides ample resources and programs to support education and lifelong learning. So maybe in this environment, that's your goal, and you want to really drive home this data. So what would be some of the data points you could use to really promote the educational and intellectual value of your library?
Let's see here. Move that over. We do have in social settings, have them ask folks how often they use their local library. Hey,
Yeah, I like that.
just,
Yeah, so what
bring it up.
kind of data, like what kind of quantitative data would we give to someone? Because at this point, we're gathering our information. We're not yet asking our board to participate. We're gathering our information. We're getting our ducks in a row. So what kind of things do you report on your annual statistics report? What kind of numbers can you share to back up the value of educational and intellectual lifelong learning at your library?
Program statistics. Yep, program use statistics.
Yep. Especially if you can say these are early literacy programs, or these are educational programs. X number of people reported that they learned something new at our programs. Yeah, so if your programs are especially tied to this goal, this wouldn't maybe apply to like your knitting program, or something that is more that social and community building one. That's still super valuable, but that kind of lives in a different goal. But absolutely that kind of information, when you can say this is directly tied to literacy, digital literacy, technology education, whatever bucket of learning you want to put that in. Absolutely.
Libraries are for recreation and fun, but it's also, people do learn. Yes, educational.
Yeah, and in this scenario, that fun aspect is, like I said, is also super valid and important. But
yes. Uses of free news resources.
Yeah, that's
The
great. Like,
library may subscribe to things like the New York Times, or place things that as an individual might not. Yeah.
Yeah. So the number of books that you have, the number of databases that you have, just listing the kinds and numbers of educational resources that you provide the community, whether that's in print or online through the Nebraska Library Commission's Nebraska Access databases, whether you have databases you purchase on your own.
Right.
But just talking about the sheer quantity of educational items that you have in your library, I think is a good data point.
Someone says
And
they
then,
should know the types of collections offered.
yeah.
Educational database use statistics, so data on how many how much those databases get used.
Absolutely, because it's not just about what you have, but that, yes, people actually use this. Because I think some people say, well, you have all that, what good does it do? It just sits there getting dusty. Like, oh no, we have usage statistics, and we can tell you that these physical books were checked out this many times, and these electronic books were checked out that many times. And you already have to collect that data anyway. You're already reporting that data anyhow. So if you put it in a little package about like this is what demonstrates our educational and intellectual value to the community. Look how many books we have. Look how many times they were checked out last year. Look how many databases we have. Look how many times they were used last year. We have a lot of resources, and the community's using them.
And this last one, outreach to educational institutions statistics.
Yeah.
For example, our bookmobile goes to schools, and we also partner and have reciprocal lending with a local college.
That is great information, because you're not only bringing those resources to the public, but you're directly supporting the educational institutions in your town, not just indirectly supporting them. So that's fabulous. I think another data point we can use is information on how like summer reading combats the summer slide in learning. So if we keep kids engaged in summer reading programs, that really does help with their academic success. So there's a lot of justification for getting them in the library in the summer and encouraging them to read and giving those reading incentives, that there is reason for that.
Fighting that summer slide.
Exactly. Yeah. And that would be easy to translate into a story. But anybody else, can you think about what would be a good story to share about this educational and intellectual value? And this could be looking back at a brag board type of thank you or kudos that someone's given you. But I think it's also going to be you having to kind of actively collect that story. So maybe somebody is using your library to take a proctored test. You could ask them and say, hey, can you tell me about why do you do this at the library instead of somewhere else? Why did you choose to do this here? Directly asking them about that so that they'll share their story with you. Or even an anecdote from a parent who thanks you for helping find their advanced reader who's really young, and they're looking for that unicorn of a book that's very challenging but also still very childlike. But how grateful they were. Or talking to teachers. Do you have teachers in the community that tell you, oh, we can tell who participates in the summer reading program because they come back next year and they're ready to go?
Yeah.
You might have to actually go out and solicit those. Or do you have stories that you can collect from your last time you did like a community survey? Did you ask some of these kinds of questions? Or next time you do a survey, can you ask some of these kinds of questions and see if you can get little snippets, little stories from people that you can share? Anything in the chat, or should I move on?
No, I don't see anything. Let's go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so lost my mouse, there we go. So yeah, this is just some screenshots of some things we've already talked about, talking about those different types of collections that you have. This is an example of a story. We had an author come, and then we have the kids give us little comments. And so we posted pictures of the events along with the kids' comments. And one of the kids said, this was the greatest experience that I could have imagined. What better testimonial is there than that?
Right.
So sharing that story out there, that like, here's some cool photos you can look at, but also here's a kid who said, this was hugely important to me.
Mm-hmm.
We did a social media campaign called We've Got a Book for That. Like, do you need home repair advice, or do you need to learn how to do your taxes? Do you need to, we kind of filled that in with a bunch of different things. Do you need to learn how to eat healthy, or, and then we just featured a book and said we have a book for that. So that's a way you can kind of blend a little bit. So again, like, what are some ways your board can help you share this message? I see we're right at 11 o'clock. So a lot of the ways your board can help are the same way, no matter what your message is. But you do have to, number one, you have to have something for them, and then you have to ask them. I think sometimes we're hesitant to ask the board to actually do it, but if we ask them on a regular basis, it gets easier. But asking them, are they part of a service club? Would they mind taking flyers to their next service club meeting? And maybe they do it just like once a quarter, because you don't want to ask them to be doing it all the time. But, could they take a flyer to the service club? Can they invite you to be a speaker at their service club? Can they talk in front of the city council, as we mentioned, sharing social media posts, giving them those elevator pitches so they feel prepared and ready with a quick answer for somebody. You could also ask them to commit to coming to a certain number of programs a year, and not that you're necessarily going to like take attendance for them and like have negative repercussions if they don't do it. But if you ask them, like, would you be able to come to one program a month? Or, because a lot of nonprofit boards, you have to commit to a certain financial commitment, or at least to financially donate something. And on a library board, we're not asking that, but could we instead ask for a commitment of time and be like, I know that there's X number of meetings a year, 6 or 12 or 18, but I would also, would it be feasible for you to also come to 10 programs this year? So that's another way that you can ask and get them involved, and they're going to be advocating because they don't want to come to the program by themselves. So they're going to bring a spouse or a friend or a kid or, something. So, okay. So
Yeah, I should have mentioned, yeah, you did mention, Jessica, that is, yeah, it's 11. We did start a little late, and that's okay. If you do need to leave because you only allocated the 1 hour to watch the show live today, that's fine. We are recording, and you can watch the rest of it when it's up and posted. Should be tomorrow. By the end of the day tomorrow, I'll have the recording up and ready for everyone to watch. But please do stick around, and we'll go as long as it takes Jessica to get through the rest of her slides.
And so we'll just flash through this one. We won't stop and discuss a lot, but we talked a little bit in the last one just about how that social and community value of the library is the third place. As a community place, you know, people can come and gather. So talking about like what meeting rooms you offer, just posting fun pictures of, we put giant yard games out in our courtyard in the summer, you know, so just posting pictures of kids playing, having a good time at the library. We have a community display area, so just, you know, posting about that, inviting the community in. We have a bilingual conversation group. So just, you know, doing the same things to promote what you do for that social and community value. So, and again, just giving your board some bite-sized pieces of information and then making the ask. So I'd be curious if anybody got any new ideas today. I think it's always helpful to think about, you know, we've learned something new. What kind of action are we going to take? What are we going to do with this new knowledge that we have? Is there an idea that you would maybe want to try? And if so, what do you think would be better if you did do that?
Yeah, go ahead and share in the questions section. Have you are you going to borrow anybody's ideas we've been talking about today? Or have you come up with other ones too? While we're waiting, I know, Jessica, you got ideas because you're writing things down.
Yes, I know. And that's part of why I love to present, because I'm always learning. Putting the presentation together makes me learn and organize my thoughts. But then whenever we are, you know, get a chance to talk about it, I'm always learning something new from people. And I love that because there's always new things we can try.
Yeah, and that's something our director here uses a phrase to R&D that, which it's for his stands for rip off and duplicate, and we mean that in the nicest way. We all share about what libraries, that's what we're about, and we want to borrow, you know, we'll borrow that idea.
Yeah, I love that.
Someone says, I used to ask my board to show up to events, and but I got out of the habit. I've had a complete turnover in board members, and I'm going to start again.
Awesome.
So, pick up on the advocacy tips on the board meeting agenda. Actually, putting like having a section of the agenda for here's some tips of how you can advocate for the library.
Awesome.
Someone said, I like the shared Google Doc to record patron stories, so someone may borrow that.
I like that too. Yeah, I love the first comment too of like, you know, it's something that you used to do. And then like sometimes I've been working in libraries for almost 25 years. Like I've maybe started doing that at some point, but did I remember to keep doing it? Yeah. When my board members turned over, like, oh, you know, I forgot that was I thought I just did that yesterday, but really it was 5 years ago. You know, like, you know, just remembering to like keep it on the schedule and to refresh ourselves that like, oh yeah, I have new board members. I need to keep doing this.
You're gonna have that turnover. You're gonna have to keep repeating things. Yeah. And it's just gonna be make it an ongoing thing. Yeah. And so he says, so many great new ideas. I love the R&D comment. Thank you. I always like to share that. When he said that years and years ago when I first heard it, I thought it was awesome. It's always stuck in my head.
I love it.
Someone's going to use that library value calculator, a great tool that I didn't know about. Yeah, I've got it linked here. I'm going to add it when I put up the archive page for today's show.
Perfect.
We all have a link to that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, if you have any other questions for me later on, you can find me at the library at jchamberlain@norfolkne.gov. I do also have a consulting and training business. So if you're curious about that part of it, you can reach me at jessica@theuncommoncompass.com. Otherwise, I am here at NPL and always happy to connect or answer questions with other librarians. So.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Jessica. It's always great to have you on. It seems like we've been doing about once a year. She comes on with some new topic to talk about. I was doing this, setting this one up, and said, "Oh, the last time we were here was last February." It seems to be a February thing. I don't know.
Seems like a good time.
Yeah, in the winter, we're all just cooped up inside. Yeah. So it says, thank you. I learned so much. Well, good. That is the
Awesome.
idea, definitely. All right, I'm going to pull presenter control back to my screen here, and there it is. Do my little show wrap up. Yeah, so thank you, Jessica, for being here. This was great information. And I'll also mention too, before everyone pops off, we will have the slides available too. Jessica will send me those PowerPoint slides, and those will be available in the show archive afterwards as well. So thank you, Jessica. Great to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. I'm going to do my wrap up here. So if you use, this is the session page for today's show, but if you use whatever is your search engine of choice and type in NCompass Live, that's the name of our show, you will find our NCompass Live main page and our archive page. These are our upcoming shows, but here at the bottom we have a link to our show archives. Most recent one at the top of the list, so today's will be there. Like I said earlier, should be done and ready by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest, and everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show will get an email from me letting you know that is available and it is here. We have a link to the recording, the show recording on our YouTube channel, and a link to the slides. And as I said, I'm going to add a link right here to that library calculator that we talked about. ilovelibraries.org/calculator, but I will add a link into the archive page as well. You can search our show archive, see if we've done a show on any topic you might be interested in. You'll see here I've got it's a huge page of just all our shows, so don't try and just go, well, I mean, you could just browse through it if you wanted to, but if you do a search, you can see if we've done something in a particular topic. But do just be aware of when a show was originally broadcast. They all have original broadcast date. Some shows will be fine to watch. Older ones stand the test of time, be good, useful information, but some things may become old and outdated. Resources may have changed drastically or not exist anymore. Links may be broken. People will work at different places than when they presented for us. But we do have our full show archives going back to when NCompass Live first premiered in January 2009, which means that this year, 2026, is the 18th year of the show. Oh my gosh. And I've been here the whole time. But this is something we do. And as I said earlier, R&D and sharing, keeping things for historical purposes and sharing. And so as long as we have a place to host all of our show archives, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we'll always have all of these recordings available for you to watch. We also do have a Facebook page. If you like to use Facebook, give us a like over there. I post reminders, just a reminder to log into today's show, introducing presenters, announcing when recordings are available. So we will push out when the recording is available on here and into our mailing lists here. We use the hashtag, a little abbreviation of our show name, NCompLive. So do give us a like over there on Facebook if you like. Next week's show, we're doing something a little different. We did have, I just emailed people yesterday who had registered. We had a little change in schedule. So next week's show is a new date for a session that was going to be on in March, but the speaker cannot do it in March, so we bumped it, moved it back. Public Library Survey, Nebraska's new data collection tool. If anyone we talked about the Public Library Survey in today's session, it was the Bibliostat platform is owned by Baker & Taylor, and as people know, Baker & Taylor going out of business, that left all states scrambling for what to do to collect the Public Library Survey data. We have built an in-house collection tool for that. And it is open now for libraries to submit the data, so we are actually collecting it now that we've got that going. The due date is April 1st, and Sam Shaw, our Planning and Data Services Coordinator, is going to do a presentation. It was going to be in March, but it's been bumped back to February because he's not available in March now. Sam's also the one that puts together those ROI flyers for the libraries. So if you're interested, want to see, if you're in Nebraska Library and need to know what's going on with the Public Library Survey, please do sign up for next week's show. It will also be recorded as usual. Or if you just want to know what we're doing here in Nebraska for collecting library survey data. Normally, the last Friday of the month is our Pretty Sweet Tech session, which is our Technology Innovation Librarian. But as you can see, since Sam needed to switch up, we did cancel that. So we do not have Pretty Sweet Tech next week. She will be back. Amanda Sweet will be back on March 25th with Pretty Sweet Tech. So that is our upcoming NCompass Live shows. And the last thing I just want to mention is a big talk from small libraries is coming up end of the month. This is our annual online conference that we do, where it's always the last Friday of February, and all of our presenters are from small libraries with, and I know you said Norfolk is 25,000 in small, but for Big Talk, we put the cutoff at 10,000. So public libraries with 10,000 population served, or K-12 or academics with a full-time enrollment of 10,000 or less. So registration is open. Please do sign up. The full schedule is available so you can see what we are doing throughout the day. The whole day does get recorded as well and is then posted to our previous conferences here as individual recordings for each session. So if you're unable to join us on Friday, February 27th, or if you couldn't join us for the whole day, you can always watch the recording. But please do sign up. It's going to be a day of a lot of great things. We've got rural libraries and mental health, disability, the Books on Band project, tiny art show, all sorts of topics. Working with your public library, working with your school, STEAM, of course. So lots of presenters from all across the country. And we are co-sponsored by the Nebraska Library Commission and the Association for Rural and Small Libraries, ARSL. So they are our sponsor for Big Talk. Big Talk also has a Facebook page and an Instagram page if you want to keep up on what's going on there. I have been posting meet the speaker session posts, so you can see all of our presenters who we have, and I got a few more of those coming. So please do register for Big Talk. Sign up for any of our upcoming NCompass Live shows. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jessica, and hope we'll see you all on a future episode of NCompass Live.